Merba fil-programm Maltese DownUnder, magażin ta' kull ġimgħa bi produzzjoni kollha kemm hi mill-belt ta' Melbourne. Jiena Marlene Scicluna insellmilkom. Fil-programm tal-lum ser nitkellmu mal-Professur Maurice Cauchi dwar studji li jagħmel fost Awstraljani tat-tieni u t-tielet ġenerazzjoni ta' Maltin. Ser niltaqgħu wkoll ma' Stefan Bonnici, intraprenditur Malti fil-belt ta' Melbourne li jimporta dajjes minn Malta. U ser immorru fil-kċina ta' Carmen Portelli biex naraw kif tagħmel il-kusksu. F'din l-ewwel taqsima ser nittrattaw il-kultura Maltija fost Awstraljani tat-tieni u t-tielet ġenerazzjoni ta' Maltin. Il-mistiden tal-lum huwa il-Professur Maurice Cauchi. Il-Professur Cauchi f'dawn l-aħħar sentejn għamel numru ta' stħarriġ fost il-ġenerazzjoni żagħżugħa, kemm tat-tieni ġenerazzjoni kif ukoll tat-tielet ġenerazzjoni. U llum infatti ser nitkellmu dwar dan l-istħarriġ. Professor Cauchi, thank you so much for being with us today. We are going to talk about these surveys that you have done in the past 2 years amongst the second and third generation Maltese. I've got some of the comments here that came out from the survey. Was there a difference between the second generation Maltese and the third generation Maltese?
Yeah, actually there's an enormous difference. First of all, in the question of age, because the second generation varies from a few years old to up to even 70 years of age. Some Maltese came to Australia in the 20s and 30s, and their children, of course, would be getting to a ripe old age of 70 years and so on. So when you say the second generation, it's an enormous spectrum, very varied, a wide range. The second obvious thing is that very few of them actually can speak Maltese. They can say the common, Kefinti, how are you, and so on.
Grazie.
But that's right. But they cannot carry on the conversation, and that is a very significant thing. The third thing which I found was the difficulty of actually communicating with these people. We seem to have lost them completely because they don't really go to Maltese clubs, they don't attend Maltese functions, right? So they don't listen to radio and television, but they do have contact with Malta by internet and so on. So, in fact, one of the questions we asked them, are they interested in Maltese politics at all? Maltese and European politics. And I'm amazed, over a third of them, actually they would be happy to go to actually take part in voting for, say, European Parliament. So there's still this cultural link. They listen to, as I say, they contact, they've got radio and papers, they read Maltese papers and so on. So there's something left there. They of course eat Maltese food, they remember that. But that is just about the sum total of the contact with Malta. Another very important consideration which has got an impact on culture maintenance is the fact that the vast majority of them actually are married to non-Maltese. And that, of course, is a death knell to language maintenance, because when somebody is married to a non-Maltese, then you've got up to 4 grandparents. And each grandparent would their rich grandchildren to speak their own language, which becomes absolutely impossible. And that's something we tend to forget. We think that Maltese, anybody who's got a mother or father Maltese, we expect them to be Maltese and learn Maltese. This is not the case, as we will see when we talk about the third generation.
The reality is, as you said, there are a lot of mixed marriages, so you would find not just the one language being spoken, if it is spoken at home, and English is the common denominator when it comes to that. You said that the younger generations do not follow Maltese radio in Australia and Maltese TV, but now through this program we're hoping we'll be able to reach them. Is it the fact that the majority or the language being used on radio and in other publications is just Maltese and it's just not just English, so they feel removed because they do not understand the language?
As I say, they just don't follow Maltese radio because they don't understand it. And besides, the other thing is of course this, that children of Maltese, first generation born in Australia, are not Maltese. They are Australian primarily and Maltese secondarily. And this is something we tend to forget. If you ask them, there's another question that was asked. If you ask them how you consider yourself, Maltese, Australian.
In fact, that was going to be my question. Do they consider themselves as Australian of Maltese descent, Australian Maltese, or Maltese Australians?
They call themselves Maltese Australians. The vast majority call themselves Maltese Australians. There's a small number, about 10%, who call themselves Australian. That means they don't want to be seen as Maltese at all. That's a very small minority. And there are some which, on the other hand, actually think of them as Maltese, pure and simple. They are the minority. The vast majority consider themselves as Maltese, Australian.
Before you said that a lot consider themselves Australian. Is it the case that they haven't been to Malta? Because sometimes you meet with the younger generation and they say once they go to Malta, they sort of discover their roots and discover the history and the culture, the rich history and culture. And then they come back changed. So they appreciate the fact that they've got Maltese heritage and they acknowledge that.
Well, that is not an aspect that was looked at in detail, so I can't say that people who went to Malta have come back converted. Right? I can't say that. But certainly, if they have got enough energy to go to Malta, rather to other places, then maybe they get something back, and that's what I believe happens. Once you go to Malta, you get something of the Maltese, and so on. But loss of culture has been important, but not as bad, I must admit, as loss of language. In other words, there is some cultural remains in the second and even the third generation. If I may say a little bit more about the third generation, yes. Because one thing that struck me about the generation, of course, is firstly their parents, that most of their parents were mixed marriages. Secondly, that they practically lost language completely. Only about 2 or 3% at very most can actually speak Maltese reasonably well. So a number of them, quite a proportion of them, actually can say we speak a little. Sometimes, maybe to the grandparents, hello, gefintush nafjen, you know. But the vast majority have lost the language. So the language is dead. Even when we ask them, you know, have you been to Maltese school? We have been trying to produce Maltese language schools at the Maltese Center and VSL and elsewhere. Very, very few, very, very small proportion have actually attended a Maltese school. So again, we are finding it very difficult to pass this on to the second generation. So in summary, I would say for the third generation now, they have practically lost the language, but there are elements of culture still there.
In fact, Maurice, you know how the older Maltese let's say the pioneers of the Maltese community in Australia have brought with them traditions, and that some traditions like festas and all those kind of traditions. How do the younger generation look at that? Because a lot of the older generation says this is all going to be lost and let's hope that the younger generation takes over, but it's not looking like that way.
No, I don't think so. As a matter of fact, one of the questions asked for the third generation is whether they belong to clubs, Maltese clubs, whether they take any part in functions, and again the vast majority said no. They don't take part in this sort of thing. When they go to Malta, they like the festa because of the brew, because of the thing, but it's got nothing to do with maintenance of culture here. So again, I would say that when the older generation goes, then clubs and the festas and things like that are going to go with them. So I'm not trying to be pessimistic, of course. I'm trying to be as realistic as I can. But my feeling is that while culture will continue for a little while longer, right? But the language we are finding it very difficult to maintain.
What about these surveys? Are you currently working on any publications with the results from these surveys?
What I'm hoping to do in this coming year is to collect the work done, because we've done quite a lot of work on the first generation, of course, how they're behaving, what are their needs particularly, because as we grow older, our needs go
It's an aging community now.
It's a very much aging community, and every year we lose quite a few of them, and their needs increase. But on the whole, Maltese are long-lived, as you know, some of the longer-lived people in Europe these days. That's how it changes over the years. So we see the job of the associations to look after the first generation, those that came to Malta, to make sure that their needs are met as much as possible. The second generation are looking after themselves. They don't need us. Okay, they take care of themselves, but we would like them to keep at least some of the culture as much as possible, and if possible, some of the language. So we believe in producing the facilities, but we're not very optimistic. When I say we, I'm using the royal we. That's my opinion in effect. I don't think that chance of keeping language are very hot.